A user profile in Windows contains settings about the user. The profile contains all the user environment including desktop, documents, and settings. When a user logs onto a computer for the first time, a profile is created on the local computer. When a user logs onto the computer again, the user will have the same desktop and settings that they previously had when they logged onto the computer. This works well when you have the same user log onto the same computer all the time, but presents a problem when the user logs onto a terminal server. When a user logs onto a terminal server for the first time, a new profile is created for them on the terminal server. The problem occurs when the same user logs onto a second terminal server. Again, the user has a new profile created for them. When you have a farm of terminal servers, this can cause a great deal of confusion to your end users. One day, they connect up to one server, set up their printers, the desktop the way they want it, and the next day, they log onto a different server and their settings appear to have been lost. To get around this problem, you can set up a roaming profile. The roaming profile is stored on a server and downloaded to the terminal server when the user logs in. When the user logs off, the profile is uploaded to the server. If the user logs onto another terminal server in the farm, their profile is automatically downloaded to that terminal server. Using roaming profiles gives the user a more consistent user experience. However, does present a few problems. When deciding on how you want to manage your profiles, consider how much disk space you will need for your profiles. Remember, your profiles contain your desktop and your documents. Users who save large files on their desktops or in their documents folder can soon find that they have a very large profile. If you are using roaming profiles, large profiles can have an effect on download times. Large profiles can take a long time to transfer from the profile server to the terminal server, especially over slow links. When a user logs onto a terminal server, their session may freeze while the profile is being downloaded. Over a slow link, the user may have to wait a significant amount of time while the profile is transferred to the server before they can start using the terminal server. If this occurs, expect to get a lot of complaints. If you are on a local area network, the delay may not be that bad. However, you should consider setting up quotas. Setting up quotas on your profile server or your terminal server will stop your user profiles getting out of control. If you want to use roaming profiles, you can set them up using Active Directory users and computers. Make sure, before you set them up, you consider the benefits and problems of using profiles. A home folder is the location that will open up by default when a user goes to save a document. In a terminal server environment, this will be on the terminal server. To help encourage end users not to save files on a terminal server, you can change the home folder to a network location. To change the location of the home folder, open Active Directory users and computers and select the properties for the user that you want to change. After you have made the change, the user will automatically be diverted to this location when they go to save a file. Hopefully this will prevent files being saved to the terminal server. The Terminal Services Manager is the main tool used to monitor and manage terminal server sessions and connections. When you run the tool on your server or on your desktop computer, the management tool will connect using the console connection. The console connection does not use any licenses and allows up to 2 administrators to connect to the server at the same time. When you connect to the console, you will not be able to connect or remote control a user's session. When running the admin tool and connecting to the console tool, you may get the following message. In order to use all the features in Terminal Services Manager, you need to run it from inside a remote desktop connection. In Terminal Services Manager, you have a number of options you can perform on sessions connected to the terminal server. The first option, Connect. Connect allows you to take over an existing session, assuming your account has Connect permissions assigned to it. If the session is not yours, you will need to enter in the user's password to connect to the session. By default, Terminal Server will not allow multiple sessions from the same user. If you connect up to a terminal server and you have a disconnected session on that terminal server, you will automatically be reconnected to your session. The Connect option is mainly used if you have disconnected sessions that you cannot reconnect to using Remote Desktop Client. If you use the Disconnect option, the user will be disconnected from their session and may reconnect. Disconnected sessions are still valid sessions on the server and will keep running on the server using resources. If you want to send a user a message, you can do it with the Send Message option. Using this option, you can let the user know information like the server is about to shut down. The remote control option allows you to take control of another user's session. By default, the remote control feature will prompt the user asking them for permission before allowing you to control their session. This, however, can be changed. The reset option will remove a session from terminal services. The user will not be logged off their session. The session will simply be removed without any data being saved. Think of the reset option like pulling the power plug from the computer. The status option gives you details about the user's session, including the IP address and the amount of data transferred. The log off option logs off a session from terminal services. This logs the user off gracefully, removing all of their processes from memory. However, application data in the terminal session may not be saved. If you need to log off a user's session, it would be best to send them a message first. Let's have a look at Terminal Services Manager in action. First of all, run Terminal Services Manager from the Start menu under Administrative Tools. Here you will notice a warning message telling you the Connect and Remote Control will not be available unless you run the admin tool from inside Remote Desktop Connection. On the User tab, you can see all the users that are currently logged into the terminal server. The Session tab shows you all the sessions currently active on the terminal server. Notice there is a special Listener session. The Listener session responds to all incoming sessions and must be running to accept new client connections. The Process tab shows all the processes that are running and which users are running them. If you wish to end a process, you can right-click on it and select End Process. Going back to the Users tab, you will notice a column called Session. This shows the current status of the session. RDP means the session is using Remote Desktop Protocol to connect. If it was using a different protocol, it would appear here, for example Citrix. Notice also the session above it, Console. The console session is the admin session connected directly to the server. By right-clicking on the session, I can also access additional options. Notice the Connect and Remote Control options are not available. These are only available when accessing your server via the Remote Desktop Client. If I select the Status option, you will notice you will get a lot of statistics about the client session. Notice in particular the client's IP address and also the amount of data the client has been sending. If I right-click on the session again, I can select the option Disconnect. This will disconnect the user from the server. However, as you will notice, the session is still up and running. If the user reconnects using Remote Desktop Connection, they can carry on from where they left off without any loss of data. If I now open Remote Desktop Connection using the admin account, I will now be able to demonstrate some of the other features. Microsoft don't allow you to open a Remote Desktop Connection to the current server using the account currently logged in. Since I am logged in as administrator, I will use the account admin, which is another administrator account that I created. Once logged in, I can run the admin tool. Notice this time, I did not get the warning coming up because I am inside a Remote Desktop Connection. If I right-click on the session I previously disconnected, you will notice I now have the option to connect, which was not available before. Before I can connect to a session, I need to enter the password as a security measure. I now have taken over the user's session. That's it for the Terminal Services Admin tool. As you can see, the Admin tool gives you access to a lot of features. Like most tools in Windows Server 2008, there are command line tools which do a lot of the same functions as the admin tools. You will find that this is an increasing trend in Windows products to provide more command line tools and better scripting support as time goes on. You will notice that there is a command line tool for each of the major functions that I just demonstrated. It is easier to use the admin tool, but it is nice to know there is command line equivalents of all the functions in the admin tool. Windows System Resource Manager, or WSRM, is included to improve server performance. It does this by controlling CPU and memory use between applications and resources on the server. There is a lot to WSRM, but for terminal services, you need to know how to configure two different policies designed for terminal services. Both these policies work off CPU use. The first is equal per user policy. If one or more users run applications that use 100% of the CPU, then all users on the server will be affected. To try and give a better terminal server experience for all users, When the user's CPU gets too high, all the processes running by that user will have their priority reduced. The lower process priority has the effect of reducing the amount of CPU available to users. This stops a single user from monopolizing the CPU and affecting all users. This works well when you have a lot of different users on the same terminal server. However, if you have a lot of users using a shared login, for example on a kiosk, this policy does not work well at all. If you have a number of shared logins, you should consider using the next policy, equal per session. This will divide the CPU up based on each session running on the terminal server. If a single session CPU gets too high, WSRM will reduce the priority of that session. One user could have multiple logons on the same server and run a CPU-intensive task in each login, and thus get more than their fair share of CPU. However, if you have a lot of shared logins, this policy is a good choice. Both policies will attempt to balance out CPU usage on your terminal server. Having either policy enabled will help provide a better experience to your terminal server users. WSRM is not just limited to terminal services. If you are having performance problems on your server, you may consider installing WSRM. Let's have a look how to install and use WSRM. First, you need to install WSRM. This is done by running Server Manager from Administrative Tools. Select Features and then select the option Add Features. From the list, select Windows System Resource Manager. The feature does require Windows Internal Database to be installed. If Windows Internal Database is not installed, the feature install wizard will prompt you to add it. Once you have installed the feature, you need to configure it to use one of the two terminal services policies. To do this, run WSR admin tool found in Administrative Tools. In this case, WSRM is running on the local server, so I will select Connect to this computer. Select Resource Allocation Policies from the right-hand side. This will show the currently available policies on this server. To change the current policy to equal per user, select the policy and then select the option Set as Managed Policy. This will disable the calendar. Using the calendar allows you to allocate CPU to certain processes at certain times. For example, at night time, you could allocate more CPU to the backup job. You will notice that equal per user policy is now the managed policy. This is funny terminology by Microsoft. In simple terms, it means this is the active policy. All other policies and the calendar option become inactive when you select the policy to be the managed policy. You will also notice the other terminal server policy, equal per session. If I make this policy the managed policy, all other policies become inactive. Only one policy can be active at once. Depending on your terminal server needs will determine which policy you want to use. Once you have set up your terminal services, make sure that you spend some time monitoring your server and fixing any potential problems. Otherwise, you may get a lot of complaints from your users.